Hi and welcome to another episode of Curiosity. I'm Gary J, your host, and today I thought I'd ask the question, was the Enfield Haunting real?
The desire to know and learn something.
You're listening to Gary J's Curiosity.
Now, this story has split the paranormal community for years, and for some it's the ultimate evidence of a haunting. So much so that it's been featured in numerous magazines and newspaper articles, websites, books, and was even the story behind the Hollywood blockbuster The Conjuring 2. The story itself is said to have started back in August 1977, when the police were called to 284 Green Street in Enfield after the tenant claimed two of her four children said that all the furniture was moving and knocking sounds were heard on the walls. The two children in question were that of Margaret, aged 14, and Janet, aged 11. Now, the house itself is said to be a council house which is located in Enfield, which is a borough of London, thus the name, the Enfield Haunting. But on the day in question, when the police attended, it's then claimed that a female police officer said that she'd saw a chair wobble and then slide across the floor. Later, claims included disembodied voices, loud noises, rocks and toys being thrown, and children levitating.
Oh look, I'm flying!
It's then claimed that over an 18-month period, more than 30 people, including neighbours, psychic researchers and journalists, saw the same things. Well, again, this all seems like a really interesting story, and when you read it, it almost looks like an open and shut case. I mean, there certainly does seem to be a lot of witnesses, and apparently this went on for nearly 2 years, until the papers finished reporting on it in 1979. But how true was all this? Well, if you believe everything that paranormal investigator Maurice Grosse reported in his books, then this is an honest account of a haunting, and these two young girls were being terrorised by something not of this world. But on the other hand, a lot of skeptics have said this is nothing more than two young girls playing a prank, and one who had the ability to throw a voice much like a ventriloquist would, but she also had the ability to deepen her voice because she had been born with false vocal cords above her larynx. But the rest of the claims of levitation, things moving on their own, etc., were nothing more than pure fiction, and people getting carried away with the whole thing. Well, if you look at this case more closely and start to delve a bit deeper, a few things start to pop up.
You're listening to the Curiosity podcast.
The fact is, all this started in 1977, which is the time when people believed in what papers actually wrote. Portable recording equipment was in its infancy comparing to today's standards, and the cinema was full of films like The Exorcist, Halloween, and The Omen. People were that convinced by some of these stories that it's claimed that when The Exorcist was released in 1974, there were hordes of people outside the cinemas protesting, and even priests were outside with crosses and Bibles. Now, I'm not sure how much of this was just hype, I really don't know, but apparently this actually happened, which in turn wouldn't have done the film any harm, but it does show how taken in people actually were at the time. So with that in people's minds, and claims made by the papers who, let's face it, would have embellished everything, it would have been easy to get carried away. So here's a theory. Imagine 1977, no such thing as the internet, no computer games, no computers. Couple of young children, bored at home, and then one of them realises that she can make these strange voices. Well, like most kids, you would play on that and then you try and scare all the other people in the house, especially your sister, who you shared a room with. I mean, come on, how funny would that be? Then one day you get told off for making a noise at night. And to take the heat off you and your sister, you tell your mum it's not you, it's a ghost in the house. You're that convincing that your mum starts to believe you, because let's face it, you're her little cherubs. So a little bit freaked out, she didn't ring Ghostbusters, no. She rang the police and apparently they turned up and then the chair falls over. Next day, your mum goes to work and then she mentions it to someone, making light of it of course, because she doesn't want to look a complete loon, and then the other person says something like,
Alright, maybe you should go to the papers, love. You might even make a bit of coin on it.
So the mum thinks about it. She has kids to feed, and the extra money wouldn't go amiss. So she thinks, God damn it, I'll do it. Next thing you know, the papers turn up, sensationalise the whole thing, And then Maurice Gross gets hold of the story and thinks, oh, hello, I might be able to look at this and cause a bit of a stir. I'll take some of me collies because there might be something in this as well. And off he trots. Now when they get there and they settle down, what is witnessed by Maurice and his colleague is some curious whistling and barking noises coming from Janet's general direction. Obviously a bit of a dog. Now at this point Maurice's eyes must have lit up, and so did her mum's, who would have just started receiving payments from different sources, and every man and his dog wanted the story. Well, this goes back to the skeptics version of events, where Janet, who was the younger of the two and the one producing the deep voices, and she claimed these came from a man called Bill, who apparently had died in the house and was now there as a ghost. It's claimed by some that she could have somehow managed to learn the use of ventriloquism skills in order to give the impression that it wasn't her, even though that she would sometimes cover her mouth as the voice came through, or her lips wouldn't even move at all. But I suppose the most famous bit of evidence out of all this was the photo taken that actually showed Janet apparently levitating in a bedroom.
You're listening to Gary J's Curiosity.
No offence, have you actually seen the picture? If you haven't, then go on Google, find it, and have a look. There is no way in hell that this kid is levitating. She's jumping from her bloody bed. Not levitating, jumping. But levitation would depict that she's above the floor for more than 3 to 5 seconds, unaided, and in most cases in the same place. Not jumping from her bed. Now, Maurice actually released this photo to the press, which in turn makes me think at this point he's actually aware that this is a hoax. And the reason I think this is because Maurice had placed a video camera in the room, and yet he decided to release one photo from a series of still photos that were taken from a camera that was on a remote controlled timer that would take a picture every 15 seconds. Now, why is this? I mean, surely a video of a person levitating would have been much better evidence than a photograph, especially since the only witness in the room was Janet's sister. But you see, there are more inconsistencies. Janet was also detected on video in the next room bending spoons and attempting to bend an iron bar. Maurice had also observed Janet banging a broom handle on the ceiling and hiding his tape recorder. And according to his colleague, one of Janet's voices, called Bill, displayed the habit of suddenly changing the topic, which was also a habit that Janet would do. So you've got to ask the question, why did Maurice and his colleagues not release any of this on video? The reason was because Maurice knew that this was a hoax. He knew that if he showed that video, any story that he had would be kiboshed and he wouldn't make any money out of it. And because it was such a high profile case, he didn't want to lose any face to the public or those in the paranormal community. But it's also claimed that further into the investigation, Janet and Margaret admitted pranking reporters. It's then claimed that Maurice compelled the girls to retract their confession, but by that time the story was already out and they were being mocked by other researchers for being so easily duped. But you've got to ask the question, if this really was happening to the whole family, then why would you let your kids, as a mother by the way, stay in that room every night on their own? Why wouldn't you all be sleeping in the same room so that you could keep an eye on each other? I mean, more to the point, why wouldn't you move rather than putting your kids through that day in, day out for 2 years? However, moving forward to the present day, the family continued to make money from magazine and TV interviews, documentaries, and obviously the story being made into a Hollywood blockbuster titled The Conjuring 2. But ever since they left the property, there's been no other paranormal activity, and at present, the house continues to be lived in by another family who are quite happy and want nothing to do with the whole story. So the question is the Enfield Haunting a true story of a family being terrorised by some entity, or is it something that was made up by 2 young girls who were just lucky enough to make a lot of money out of their piece of fiction? Let me know your thoughts, and thanks for listening. I'm Gary J, and this is the Curiosity Podcast. And don't forget, you can watch my series Curiosity on Amazon Prime. So chat to you soon, and as always, remember, do something that scares you.
The desire to know and learn something.
You're listening to Gary J's Curiosity.